Yuki Maya, let me not lie to you, dog. You need to step up your game right now. Thank you to our $5 patrons, Strawbones, Redwolf4765, Midnight Gemlord, and Artgoon555. Now, before we hop into this breakdown / review of chapter 192 of Blue Loco, please don't forget to leave your own in the chapter in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to hit that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you can support for as low as $1 a month. Get these exclusive videos, early content, and more. Now, let's hop into the review. What's up, guys? I'm Punzo, and here we are to do a review of 192 of Blue Loco, which is known as Upheaval. And I'm not going to lie to you. This chapter put a lot of things in perspective. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll find out in future chapters. But let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. So we open up, and we do get to see that, yeah, you know, Chris Prince, he's like, yeah, it's my turn. You know, I'm getting on the field. It's all me, baby. It's all me. And I wonder, like, every time he throws off this stuff, like, notably, he doesn't throw it anywhere near, like, his actual seated position or anything like that. He just throws it on the ground. So does someone have to retrieve that? Like, every time? Is that a teammate's job to go and retrieve it for him? Like, hey, go grab those and fold them for me. Those things are expensive. Ego doesn't pay for them. We have to buy them ourselves. I just did it for the flex. Seriously, I don't know. I wonder. Chris Prince is such a character already that I appreciate him, but darn is he strange. And you do get to see that our squad is like, whoa, Nani? Already? As Raichi would say. And then we get to see that one of the guys from the U20, yes, I forgot his name, give me 1 second. I didn't even have to finish the Google search to remember his name was Neo. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Essentially, he was the really strong bulldog kind of guy, and he's like, "Wow, nine guys just gonna convince Prison, or you're the one." I need to stop saying. But regardless, he's the one who asked him, like, "Oh wow, this is crazy. You're gonna help the team in the final moment and mentor them from the pitch." And I will give Chris credit. At least he's honest. Like, legitimately, with the cameras watching, I probably would have been like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because I care about the next generation. But no, Chris is about the business. He's like, for the team? Mentor? No. If you don't stop spitting nonsense, I'm going to break your neck. Listen here, buddy. Listen here. The game is tied 2-2. Call it a dress. The player who scores the next goal will become the hero. And if there's one thing I am, it's a hero, buddy. And, like, I guess it makes sense. Notably, Blue Lock has always been about the ego of man. So I guess it does make sense that these coaches are pretty much focused on their own egos, what brings them to coach and what brings them to be the greatest in the world. We even see that with Lavahino, and we see it now again with Prince. And it's interesting how realistically this ego is a bit, it's interesting, right? Because this, especially with how Chris Prince just tears his shirt off, it especially reminds me of Barrow. And like, almost, I want to say almost pre-development Barrow, but I guess this is post-development Barrow in the sense that it's like, oh, yeah, these guys, they still know to utilize the team and stuff like that. But the selfishness beyond all else is very interesting. And it's interesting how the greatest striker in the world seems to not possess that ego. And it makes you wonder, like, ego and moderation. What does that mean for strikers and the case of Blue Lock in itself? Like, maybe the overwhelming ego that all these guys have doesn't necessarily work out, and that's why they'll always be inferior to Noah, who seems to have a mastery over his ego. He is unafraid to sit back and watch and help his people improve because he knows he's the best. That confidence in himself is what allows him to be number one. Meanwhile, people like Prince, like Lavahino, who knows, even Loki and that other dude, like, what is their ego going to be? Is it going to be that same overwhelming nature from the World 5 match? I don't think realistically that Loki was that arrogant. He seemed like pretty chill kind of guy. Sure, he's only 17, so maybe not. But it's interesting. It's very interesting. It makes me wonder how these guys are going to play later on. Like once we see them actually like unrestricted from the star chain system and just fully out there to play, I'm very interested to see how these guys do. However, we do get to see that obviously everyone there is like, yes, you know, how is he being such an egoist? And he's such an egoist to the point that like when the alarm speaker comes on and says, "Hey, buddy, close. Children watch us. Yellow card." He's like, "Yeah, I know." Which makes me wonder, like, does he just take the yellow card at the start of every game? Like, if you know it's just a yellow card, you're like, I'm going to make sure I do not foul anybody else or the rest of this game period. Especially in only 3 minutes, right? Like, obviously, he doesn't care too much. With that being the case, it would be hilarious if he just like, "Hey, check out the abs" at the start of every game. It's a trademark Chris Prince thing that you gotta see the games. However, we do see that the other team, the team that I still cannot name for fear of obvious things, the team that Isagi's on from Germany, it's like, wow, he's kind of stupid, but you know, he's kind of cool. He's the cool kind of stupid, and like, isn't that what Blue Lock's all about? So it's cool to see that these guys, as much as they look on and see like some idiocy within these people, like something that makes them extremely off-brand, off the market, they still have enough common sense to respect them, right? Like that's just how it is. It's sort of how they are forced to respect Ego, because like Ego's a madman, he's crazy, but he's obviously provided literally the ultimate results. Though we do cut over, we get to see that Rayo is asking, I bet, Chris, you joining the game? What's the new style? And notably, something I do love, once again, Blue Lock is full of background details. Literally always watch the background characters in Blue Lock, because they're always telling a story, because Yusuke Nomura is just absolutely insane. So you do see, as Rayo's all excited and happy, he has this big old grin on his face. He honestly reminds me of the dog dude, the Kitsune dude from the U20. It's just the way he's drawn there. With that being the case, it actually makes me wonder, like, never mind. I was about to make a joke. But we do get to see in the background that Nagi is looking on soft-eyed. Like, he doesn't have any of that same fire anymore. He's just sweating and looking like, do I really care what position Prince is in? Like, do I really care anymore? Like, you can see, and like the last review was me talking about how I think Nagi is gonna end up dying. Like, not dying. Like, his ego is gonna end up dying because he reached his goal. He beat Hisagi. He has no other reason to live anymore, and he kind of doesn't care. So it's interesting seeing that even in the background, Nagi's like, it's not for me. I don't care. I don't know. It's very interesting. And with that being the case, it's also interesting to see how the whole style has kind of switched so that, yeah, our cast is not the lead, like, at all. Like, nowhere near. To the point where no Blue Locker is a forward in this formation. It's Agi and Chris. Essentially a traditional style. Sure, it's a hyper-offensive system where it's literally Rayo, Nagi, and Shigiri all backing them up. But in terms of who's leading the game, it's no longer Blue Lock. It is legitimately just Chris Prince. It's like a regular Manshine game, which, interesting. It goes to show, once again, why some of these egoists, while they have good methods, they are doing good in specific ways, some ways that may be even better than Noah, allowing people to literally customize themselves so that they are the perfect and most appropriate fit. They still have these weaknesses. They still have these things that make it so that they can't function well as coaches. And ultimately, it may make it so that in the end, in the long run, BM has the best training experience because they are not constantly getting suppressed by the egos of their coaches. Interesting. And we see that after Chris lines out the format, Rayo just submits himself. He's like, I bet. Like, he doesn't even get nettled. And I'm not saying you have to get nettled. Like, I feel like they don't feel like that sometimes. Maybe you just view it as, whatever, you know, you gotta do what the master says. But still, Rayo, you're a striker, ain't you? And even if you ain't a striker, Nagi's a striker, ain't he? So Shouldn't you be a little bit nettled, a little bit mad, a little bit confused about why you and Nagi aren't on the front lines anymore? And we see, even if Reo isn't going to get a little bit nettled, Chris is a little bit interested. Maybe not nettled, but interested. He's like, hey, that was a great goal, Nagi, but Rhea, what happened? I thought you said you want to become the best player in the world alone. Have you given up on that ideal already? And notably, I love it. Rubbing my hands together. And nope. I repeat, I'm not preying on Rhea's downfall that heavily. Like a little bit, probably. I may have not liked him since he was shown on Team Z, but still, not shown on Team Z, but shown against Team Z. But regardless of that, I like how characters, even if Reo ends up succeeding in this way, right? Like, it's not necessary that Reo falls here and he falls out of fashion or whatever. It doesn't necessarily matter at all to me. But what I do like is that since this story is all based around individuality and what you bring yourself to the game, someone as arrogant, someone as steeped in ego as Prince himself, who's literally willing to use the team for his own stardom, still focuses enough on his coaching role that he's like, hey, dude, we spent all this time making you the best version of you for yourself based on your own ideal. What the heck happened that you gave up on it so quickly? I like that. I don't know. It's something that, I've been calling out as an issue. The moment Reo decided to submit himself, it's something that Agi himself pointed out. It's like, I'm not sure if this is a good thing. And I love how, I keep wanting to say Nomura, but I believe Nomura is the artist. But I love how the Blue Lock mangaka is going out of their way, reinforcing this idea that every pro player, every person who really has the experience and stake in the game to know that this may be a bad decision, is really challenging Reo on it. Agi, while he's not in the New World 11, I don't believe, he still is an extremely skilled player who's looking at Reo and seeing a dead end. Chris Prince, his very coach, is looking at Reo and seeing a dead end. Stuff like this, submitting to others in a world full of ego, in a world full of strikers, is not a thing that's going to be encouraged. It's not a thing that's going to be praised. And I'm glad that the consistency is there. And a manga that wouldn't care too much about consistency, it would end at, that was a great goal, Nagi, keep it up, and we'd be like, keep pushing. But no, in Blue Lock, in Peak Lock, we know that this is something that is fundamentally important to these characters, and thusly, with how fundamentally important it is, it has to be addressed, it has to be hammered in, and it has to be questioned. And overall, once again, we're going to see how valuable Reo ends up becoming in the long run, as long as he sticks to the submissive ideal. And with, once again, Nagi just being flat-faced, bored, and disinterested in the background, I still don't think this is going to go too well for either of them, because both of them failed at the main thing that they need to do, which was their individuality. However, speaking of that, Chris is just going to talk about it. As Reo questions him, he's like, Blue Lock, isn't this the place to make the greatest striker in the world? The world's #1. And we see that, and I love it. It's little details, but in the panel beneath that, where Chris is asking the question, you see that Nagi is shrouded in darkness. His lighting is a bit darker, like there's a light gray shade over him. It's almost as if he's a grayed out character. He's lost a lot of his light and luster. Meanwhile, Reo is the one who's fully believing in this. He's the one who's fully invested. And he proudly claims, that doesn't matter. Not to me. My real dream is winning the World Cup anyway. I'm fine with Nagi becoming the world's #1 striker with me as his right-hand man. I've made my choice. For the sake of my dream, Blue Lock can be just a stepping stone. And once again, I don't know. Let me see. Let me see if I can tie this into I can't tie this into pencil reality. I am not an egotistical soccer player. But regardless, I think generally in life, it's good to have someone that you can have fun with. It's good to have someone that you can call a partner. I'd say everyone in life deserves at least one human life partner, whether that be someone you're interested in, someone who's a friend, someone you love, anything like that. I believe everyone deserves at least one. Get multiple if you can, but at least one. However, the dangerous thing about something like that, the dangerous thing about submitting yourself entirely to someone and not coexisting with them, being their subordinate, being someone who is reliant upon them and not inter-reliant, is the dangerous fact that you can get left behind. And I can see it. It's so clear, especially just how detached Nagi seems now. Reo is choosing this new ideal. He's delving into this new ego by completely ignoring the mistakes of the past. Nagi has already very clearly shown Reo that he is a lazy individual who desired one thing, and when pressured to do different things, he didn't want to, and thusly he failed. So if Nagi ever becomes disinterested in becoming the world's greatest striker, ever becomes disinterested in playing with Reo, ever just gets bored, as we've seen very recently, just this last couple of chapters, Nagi is very much equal to dead weight. And Reo will fall behind because of that too. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm not saying that I could entirely be reading Nagi wrong here. Like, I could be misinterpreting art. I could be taking his silence as different things. Once again, this is why I love manga like this. Like, manga with fire art, you can interpret it in 15 different ways when there's not speech bubbles telling you how to interpret it. But I don't know. Just my spider senses, they're tingling a bit. They're buzzing. They're running and gunning in my head right now because of how blatant this seems, how blatant a contradiction it seems. I feel like Nagi and Reo aren't special enough. Like, I don't think they're special enough to be an exception to the very rules of this game. Once again, the thing about both Reo and Corona, in this sense, as subordinate players, as non-egoists, is that they are easily replaceable by someone who does their job better. And I'm not saying Corona doesn't have the ability to develop his own ego and evolve further, but still, in the sense that Reo is submitting himself to Nagi the moment Nagi stops caring, all the value that Reo is, all the value that his ideal holds, and all the value his ego has goes to nothing. And I'm intrigued to see how the mangaka takes it. It'll be a long-run story. I don't think we're going to get the conclusion of this anytime soon. But I can feel it in my bones. Something's going to be up with this. And Chris, of course, he asked Reo, is this your new ideal? And Reo, with fire in his eyes, thick speech bubbles, and thick line art, says, no, this is my ego. And I hope for the best, Reo. I hope, for your sake at least, that Nagi doesn't ever get bored of you. And I hope in this next battle against the rest of the teams, in this battle to earn a spot on the Blue Lock 11, that ego doesn't look at you and judge you as inferior product, something that can be replaced and left behind. For we already have Rin, and who knows, maybe we could get Itoshi too. But regardless of that, we do cut away. Well, not I say cut away, but we are not in a shonen manga. We are in a. Is this? Still, I think it's still kind of a shonen manga. But Noah walks up and he's like, "Ideals, ideals. You say all that, but in the end, you're only thinking about showing off, Chris. You fail as a master." And once again, Noah is a character who since he's been like built up since the beginning of the series and since we've been introduced to him, has simultaneously felt underwhelming and yet overwhelming. Is that weird? Like, then I suppose the balance of that would be he just feels normal. But with that being the case, this almost indifferent view, it reminds me of, what's a good example that doesn't spoil everything? That's the issue. When since I read manga, I spoil everything when I talk about it. But essentially, you know how, this is going to be for my Seven Deadly Sins fans out there, you know how No Emotions Meliodas kind of looked upon the plot and everything in it with just like almost disinterest. Like, it was just pure analytical data and numbers to him. Like, he's like, oh yeah, Elizabeth, I'm literally only doing this because I empirically promised you to do it 3,000 years ago. I actually don't have feelings about this anymore. I'm just doing it because I gotta do it. That almost transcendent level of power and viewpoint relative to the rest of the characters here is what Noah has. It's that absolute supremacy, those deep empty eyes that hold the world in them, that really makes me respect it. And I don't know, That's where the overwhelming thing comes from, like that almost monstrous presence. And I think a big moment where Noah displays that is when Isagi goes to him and is like, "Yeah, Noah, how am I failing? Like, what am I doing wrong? What is happening here?" And Noah's like, "Okay, tell me exactly how you score a goal." And Isagi explains it, and he's like, "Okay, tell me how you reach the conditions to exactly score a goal." And Isagi explains it. And then he can't explain what Noah asks him to next, every single thing he does for that goal. And he asks him, "If you have all of that, do you think you can beat me?" And Isagi says no. That kind of overwhelming presence, that's what carries Noah right now. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. The only reason I feel like he's underwhelming is because he isn't doing what the rest of the egotists are doing. He isn't going out there and just absolutely styling and body bagging people. Sure, he did a little bit against Lava Hino, but once again, he's, in comparison to the extreme, insane, bombastic characters of Blue Lock, he's oddly serene. I'm pulling out such weird words. Go get your dictionaries. But like, that kind of almost supremacy in serenity is amazing, and I like it. And we do get to see that with Noah stepping in, Chris is like, well, I'll lead you Willikers, fellas. If it isn't Mr. World's #1. I haven't forgotten about last year's UEFA's Men Player of the Year award. And that's such an oddly specific thing that it once again, it shows the fragility of ego and a lot of these other characters. Lava Hino sort of had the same issue when he interacted with Noah. He was so focused on the past and where he lost that it seems like he's always going to be inferior. Like, I'm assuming Noah has participated, or at least has been a part in multiple different competitions, has done multiple different things, and has beaten multiple different people, to the point where, once again, he almost has that looking down on the earth from the heavens kind of supremacy to him. Like, he doesn't necessarily care what the rest of the world views him as, or how they think of him, because he's just him. Like, that's just a part of who he is at this point. Meanwhile, someone like Chris, someone who's so focused on the material, so focused on the now, is unable to let go of things like the past and focus on improving himself so that stuff like that never happens again. And we see that Chris tries to take pride in things. Like, he's like, the votes decided the results. I ended up right behind you in second place. If you weren't there, I'd be first. It was so close. And once again, I think this is a little bit of a character break, but I think it works because it's still that, like, empirical numbers. Like, I'm focused on what gets results. He's like, Noah goes on to be like, wait, it was close? You mean where I got 882 votes and you got your measly 201? And, like, it's just really weird. I don't know. Nomura goes out of his way to draw it very cartoonishly, and like, he even has Chris be like, don't point that out, even though the gap between first and second was the largest in history. Don't point that out either. Like, it shows that Noah, once again, he has this sort of like knowledge of the lower world, but he doesn't care. But he still has enough care to be like, measly 201. He doesn't just say, I got 882, you got 201. He says measly. So he still does have that little bit of humanity in him, which I think makes him work. It gives him that little extra flavor that keeps him from being an absolute robot, but still gives him that sort of like, I am holier than thou aesthetic. And I think it works. It's a very hard line to balance just because of the nature of how you would have to write a character like that. And you can see with how Noah's being written, it's not the simplest thing to do, but still, it's impressive. And we do get to see that with this being the case, it's sort of where Chris is just embarrassing himself in front of everybody, like, but with that being the case, Chris solidifies himself up, and it's like, you know, it'd be like that sometime, guys. You know, he got in my head, he got under my skin, but don't worry, everything will be fine. And we see that Noah, once again, in his higher than thou status, is like, yo, let me level with you, Blue Lock, or I suppose BM in this case. I'm not coming in as a forward, but I'm going to be a defensive midfielder. My whole goal, my whole purpose in this game is shutting this guy down for 3 minutes. That's all I need. And we see that Chris is arrogant enough to believe that he could take on Noah. However, we saw Lavi do the same thing or say the same thing, and while he did get his dub mainly because Isagi stepped in, now with pretty much no one being stupid enough to do that except for maybe Yuki Maya just because of how desperate he is, yeah, I don't exactly see how Prince is going to succeed here. And we do get to see that Noah is just generally explaining to Chris, who seems once again so developed in this narcissistic, almost unhealthy ego, that, yo, Chris, think about this. This is not a stage for you to shine on. This is a training camp for these kids. And we see, interesting, Chris's response is, Noah, I really hate that part like you. I think this is a translation thing, but I'm assuming he means to say, I really hate that part about you. And I think it's the ability to suppress one's ego again. A big thing about Blue Lock. I remember seeing, plug in the TikTok again. It's in the comment section down below. Not the comment section. It's in the description down below. If you want more pencil content, go down there. Click on that. But a big thing, a girthy thing, if you will, that is present within Blue Lock is egos. And due to that, I saw a guy talking about, oh yeah, I could just not get into Blue Lock. It was all about egos and being narcissistic and blah, blah, blah. And that's bad and stupid, and I didn't like it. And no, really, to be fair, it on a first read through, especially if you're like trying to gobble through the series like I did, it is actually pretty easy to believe that. Like, oh no, to be good in Blue Lock, you just have to be mean, loud, and narcissistic, and dumb, and mean, and stupid, and blah, blah, blah. But if you go throughout the series, it's very rare, if ever, that the series actually supports that notion. It supports healthy egos. It supports a healthy understanding of oneself and one's abilities. So the point where a lot of arrogant characters get put down by characters who aren't arrogant. The underdog story inherently works for Blue Lock because that's how it's supposed to go. Look at Boro. Look at how he got overwhelmed. He got overwhelmed because he could not suppress his nasty ego. He had to change and learn how to manipulate it better. Look at Nagi. Nagi got beat because he had an overwhelming ego that was looking down on others in an impure way. He ended up losing. Look at pretty much every other character who had an omega crazy dominating ego. In one way or another, they ended up losing. From Sei to Shido to even Rin himself, in ways, one way or another, with a flawed ego, you ended up losing. So it's interesting how Noah, once again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the man who stands at the peak of the mountain seems to have absolute control over he himself. I like that. I like how that's the whole story of BM so far. And we cut back to our MC, Isagi Yoichi. And he's like, oh, wonderful. The entire field is changing now that those two are subbing in. And now we see Isagi is realizing his place in the world now. He's like, I must sort out the situation so I can take over this match. First, ever since I acquired Metavision, my abilities have all evolved exponentially. But even with all of that, it wasn't enough to beat Kaiser. My overall speed and overall body movement are slower than him. And above all, I don't have the Kaiser impact. So what Isagi is realizing is that he has one way, one key, one hope to truly stand above, stand independent, and stand true amongst these beasts and demons. He sort of has to evolve Metavision in a way that he cannot be stopped. He needs to find one thing that only he can do in order to make himself unique from Kaiser. Because with Kaiser Impact and just better stats, there's nothing that Isagi can do that Kaiser can literally not just do better. He has a Ness where Isagi has a Corona. He has a better direct shot where Isagi has a worse direct shot where Kaiser has Kaiser Impact, the fastest swing speed. Everything Kaiser has, Isagi just has a lesser version of. So he has to find that one thing that'll make him stand out. Because Metavision obviously just, it ain't doing it. It has not given him a goal just yet, just because of how powerful Kaiser is. So now he's going to have to use his mind, his abilities, his brain to input and analyze the data coming from those two faster than anybody else, so his Metavision can sort of have a lead, a next breaking point, a meta break point that is beyond what even Kaiser can see, because that's the only thing that Isagi can provide. He's not going to suddenly get a growth spurt mid-match. He's not going to suddenly unlock a new legs or anything like that. His arms aren't suddenly going to get longer. His gains aren't suddenly going to explode. What he needs is to use his mind even better than Kaiser can use his. I like that evolution for Isagi. Once again, characters who think above. They're just above. There's above. If your character punches harder to win, I'm sorry. It's fine. It's cool. It works enough. And it can make you a whole ton of money. But please let your characters think. However, speaking of characters who think, we're cutting over to Yuki Maya Genya. And we see that he is a little bit nettled with the idea that these superstars are just coming in and stealing the show. And we see that he is in a similar vein to what Isagi was before he unlocked Metavision. He has no clear goal right now. He realizes that in the grand scheme of things, he's kind of just been, is vibing even the word? He's just been there. He hasn't even really been vibing at this point. He's just been running around like an idiot. And while his eyes are still pretty much fine, his vision is getting a little bit blurry because he's losing his eyesight, obviously. He can't worry about that. Like, that's the last thing that can be on his mind because he hasn't done anything. And he's even lucky that he didn't get subbed out. And honestly, if he ends the match like this with pretty much no data other than a face block, it's not going to look good for him. At least Isagi has an assist. At least Isagi is built different. Now he has Metavision. This is something that even Noah noticed and acknowledged and was like, hey, wait a minute there. You seem viable and valid. We can keep you in more than just for the brownie points. So Yuki Maya needs something to prove. And admittedly, this is very interesting, right? Like, Yuki Maya is clearly set up to be... I'd say he's more set up to be the Bachira of this arc rather than the Rin. And what I mean by that is Rin was a person who was superior to Isagi in pretty much every single way, shape, and form. It was just a better version of him that Isagi needed to copy stats from and learn how to use better in order to surpass him. That is what Kaiser is. Kaiser is the Rin of this arc with his own unique twist. And I like that. I like that. But what Isagi is sorely lacking in this arc is a Bachira, someone who is relative to Isagi with their own unique flares and quirks that allow them to stand out on their own with their own interpersonal journey. Initially, before Yuki Maya sort of got put into this role, I thought that was going to be Kunigami, but I don't know. I guess Kunigami is being saved for like the next game or maybe the next arc or something like that, because we haven't necessarily touched on him. Sure, he stole a goal, but like, that's it. Bro hasn't necessarily done anything nor interacted much at all. He's just been talking smack and admittedly kind of backing it up. Though the interesting thing is, it's like, despite Yuki Maya taking up this sort of Bachira-esque position, he's kind of being written as if he were the Rin of this arc. Like, the way, especially the way the panel is formed, right? Because we see that Yuki Maya, he's very concerned. Like, the score is 2-2, 1 goal left. This is his final chance. He needs to put his life on the line. And we see this kind of parallel to how Rin was thinking in the U20 and how Isagi was sort of... That's the thing. Like, Isagi isn't even acknowledging Yuki Maya. Meanwhile, that's weird to think about. Like, in the U20, Rin and Isagi were constantly acknowledging each other as like, oh, yeah, this guy's him. He is definitely a threat, and he is getting in the way. Like, they even have a whole comparison dialogue where it's like, oh, the game is revolving around Rin. Oh, no, the game's actually revolving around Isagi. They both viewed each other in such a respectful way that they saw each other as legitimate threats. Meanwhile, Yuki Maya and Isagi are both seeing this as their last chance, but they are both entirely independent of themselves, which reminds me of the Bachira dynamic, but I don't know. It's a new twist. It's a new spin. It's a new juicy taste on it. And I'll admit, I do like it. I'm interested to see where this goes. And we get the iconic panel where we see the two walk past each other. I'm not even sure if they're actually genuinely walking past each other in reality or if this is just the 2 points converging, where they both say, I'll be the one to steal the last goal. And this is their time. This is their time. And we see what is essentially the perfect final piece reveal itself through a certain man. And Noah walks up and he's like, hey, listen up. Yeah, in this game, I'll ally myself with whoever plays the most logically. And we see the lineup, the squad, if you will. And with Noah as a defensive midfielder, he essentially acts as the anchor of the team. And with him being the anchor of the team and Isagi being an offensive midfielder, what this essentially means is that if he can properly bait Noah into his world, he then has the strongest piece in history. Legitimately, if he can pull Noah into his little galaxy system that he has set up here, to say the very least, it's going to go a little bit crazy, and I'm excited to see Isagi attempt to pull it off. However, of course, we know that people who play logically are Ness and Kaiser. They do play quite optimally, and with Grimm still there, they do have their old-fashioned setup. And with Noah threatening this, if they prove better than Isagi, he will not help Isagi, which is going to be very interesting. Once again, this is 3 minutes long. They have this chance here, and I'm excited to see it. And we see that, and interestingly enough, maybe in a natural suppression of his ego as a response to that man, that beast, that monster, Noah. Chris says, hey, let's go, Manshine. It's the last goal. Are you guys going to watch me be the hero? Or will you become the hero? Let's see, Blue Lockers. And I'm intrigued. Once again, we see that Nagi has not smiled once. He's not said a single word this entire chapter. Meanwhile, Reo is grinning excited, and Agi is looking from the back like, really, bruh? You know that this team is fodder. The only good striker on here is Shigiri now. We lost all our good players. It's just you and me, Prince. Nah, but we do get to see that with this game entering the final stages, everyone is sweating, everyone's intense, and everyone's ready for battle. And we see now there's the offer of who will emerge as the hero. The superstars or a dark horse. I'm assuming this dark horse would be Isagi. Just based on the idea that I don't think he's not going to score for 2 games in a row. I think he is going to get a dub here and he may have to cool down the next game. However, we do end the chapter with that. And notably, another character who didn't speak throughout the entire chapter but is featured on the final page is Kaiser. And he seems a lot angrier than he did before. So I am excited. However, that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below. You can support for as low as $1 a month. You get these exclusive videos, early content, and more. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dago the Pencil, writing off.